Hi everyone, today I want to ask you a question. Are you making Ishmaels? Think of what I'm asking. Are you making Ishmaels? I think this is one of the things we as believers struggle the most with in a certain area, and we make a lot of problems for ourselves because we are making Ishmaels. It is something that feels good, it even looks good, but let's begin. I want to first give us some background where the story comes from. I'm just going to do it in short. I'm not going to read all the scriptures. You can go read the scriptures on your own time. But this story comes from Abram. Now Abram, he was given a promise by God that God will provide a son for him. So God gave a promise. Let's call it in today's terms. Let's say he also prophesied it to Abram. I'm going to give you a son. Obviously, as we know the story, as God promised Abram the son, Abram had issues with the promise because there were things that might not be kosher. He was old. Sarah had issues. She was old. So at their age to bear a child was not possible. So they saw the impossible when God said he's going to make it possible. Alright, so they were struggling to get to terms with this. You can go read in Genesis 16 about this all, and in Genesis 17 you can go read about this. I'm not going to read all of that for you. You can do that on your own time. But God promised Abram a child. Then things happened. Time went on. Abram was struggling to wait for this problem. He and Sarah, he wanted his son desperately. He really truly wanted a son, and he was excited. God said he could have a son at his age. So like any normal person, he wanted his son. So Abram decided to make his own plan. He went and said, listen, I wanted a son. Sarah said, okay, go sleep with the slave Hagar and you will have your son. Abram went. He went to Hagar and she bare him a son. This son was called Ishmael. Alright, a lot of stuff happened after that. Sarah, I don't want to say, was getting jealous. There was issues, which was normal. Also, just something to note, with Abraham sleeping with Hagar, at that time, it was normal for that to happen. It wasn't something sinful or anything. Please remember that. It was the norm of the day that they slept with the servants or so. Okay, so it wasn't something sinful that Sarah was proposing to Abram here. But Ishmael got born. Sarah and Hagar, there were issues that I can believe will be there. So things got a bit difficult. Then later, Sarah falls pregnant and she brings forth the son Isaac. God comes when God came to Abram, Abram said, I got the son, here is my son, he looks like me, like Abram, here he is. And God said, that was not my promise. Isaac is the promise. That one might look like you, Abram, but he's not from me. So Abram had now two sons. First one, Ishmael, which he decided to go make with the slave Hagar. The second one came later in God's timing, which was called Isaac. And God said, that's my promise. Not Ishmael. Ishmael was not my promise. Now the problem is, Abraham had two sons that he needed to raise. He had Ishmael and he had Isaac. You can go read about it. There was issues with Ishmael. He went away. Just something to note that's very important. When God sent Ishmael on his way, Hagar, he blessed Ishmael. He didn't chase him away. He blessed Ishmael. All right. Now I want to take that story. Remember what I just said. And I want to make it practical for you today. Because remember my question was, are you making Ishmaels? And I said this is one of the number one things that we as believers do. And we struggle and we don't understand why we're struggling. we are making Ishmaels. In my group, they know I will ask them, are you making an Ishmael? Because in today's terms, God will come and give you a word, a promise. I'm going to give you that job. I'm going to take you to that country. I'm going to help you do this, A, B, and C. And then you wait for that promise to come. But then you get agitated, can't wait anymore. You get a bit busy because this is not happening. This promise, this word, this prophecy, it's not happening. And you do what a lot of people do. You can make an Ishmael. You could do it in your way. Let's use an example. God said, I'm going to take you to that country one day to work for me there. And then you go and decide, listen, I've been waiting 2 years for this thing to happen. It's not happening. Here's an opportunity to go now. I'm going to go. This is the Lord. I'm going to go now. And you don't realize you're actually making an Ishmael. It's not God's timing. You are deciding to do this because of the promise that you've received. And you go to that country now. And then you get to that country. You start doing God's work because that's what you want to do. There's nothing evil in it. It might be going good. You might be receiving finances from parents or people. It looks like it's going well. But there's always problems that will occur in that time. Things will get hard, difficult. Things will go wrong. And then you don't understand, but what's going on here? We know things go difficult and wrong when we work for God, but something is wrong here. And what you don't realize is you made an Ishmael. And now you have to raise that Ishmael. You made him, you've got to look after him. And then we are so, sometimes as believers, don't want to show people we made a mistake, and we try and push this thing through, this Ishmael through, just so people don't see we made a mistake. Guys, there's nothing wrong if we make mistakes. It's correcting the mistakes that's the right thing to do. Not keep on struggling with a mistake so that people don't see you made a mistake. We as believers are so scared that others will see we made a mistake. I've made plenty of mistakes. I've made a lot of Ishmaels. But the thing is to stand up and correct it. Remember this. If you are doing something that you did on your own terms, you didn't wait for the promise, and it looks like it's going well, okay, there's God's providing, He will provide. He blessed Ishmael. If God is blessing something you're doing, and this, I can't state enough how important this is. If God is blessing something you are doing, and you think it's Him, maybe it's an Ishmael, He will still bless whatever you do. But it might not be His plan. You had to wait for the Isaac, but you didn't. Now you're stuck with the Ishmael, and you have to raise that Ishmael. And the Ishmael brings problems. Abraham had a lot of problems. We still have problems today because of Ishmael. Ishmael doesn't go away. He will keep with you, stay with you, and He will give you a lot of problems, that Ishmael. Don't say, God's blessing me this financially to do this trip or this work or whatever, so this is God. No, God will look after you, His son, His daughter, He will look after you. A blessing doesn't mean it's from God. Guys, if you can understand this, a blessing does not mean something is from God if it's getting blessed. God blessed Ishmael and it was not from him. God will bless something you try for a season, but He will soon show you that was not Him, that was you. You decided to make your own Ishmael. You didn't wait because He wanted you to go over to that country in 8 years' time. But you went in year 2. You made an Ishmael. Now things are not set the way you wanted it to be set. He gave you the choice when to go, to listen to when He is telling you to go, but you made your own choice and went there. Ishmael is a difficult thing to deal with. I think a lot of us, if we are true to ourselves, have got Ishmaels that we have to deal with, even today, that we made years ago. A blessing does not mean God is in it. If people are giving you finances to the country, whatever the case may be, I'm just using one example, it can be anything. It's not to say it's from God, guys. You need to hear from the Spirit if it's from God, not just because things are happening in a way. He will give you stuff. He will give you a place to stay. He will give you finances to buy a place. He will do all that stuff. But it's not Isaac, it's Ishmael. You're going to stay stuck with the consequences of your doing. You're going to do things wrong because you were not ready to go there yet. You were not ready to do that job yet. You were not ready to have that yet. Because you were still busy training you for that, and now you jumped the gun and you went on your own. You made an Ishmael. If we read in Genesis 16, verse 12, look at what it's saying here about Ishmael. And he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. He's going to be a wild man. Your Ishmael is going to give you problems at some stage. And then you're going to have to deal with it. You can't run away from an Ishmael. He's your child. You gave birth to that child. You've got to raise him until you can let him go. We need to learn to wait. To be in God's rest. Then move when He tells you to move. Don't get frustrated, busy. You will miss what God had in store for you. You're going to make your own Ishmael, and now you're going to have to deal with it. Ishmael's plan is not part of your inheritance. God's plan was part of your inheritance, not Ishmael's plan. So bring it together. Abraham didn't want to wait. He and Sarah, they made their own plan. Ishmael got born. They had to raise him. At some stage he left. He brought problems. There's a lot of problems. We still have that problem today with Ishmael being on the Muslim side of things against our religion maybe. It's still there. The Ishmael didn't go away after how many years? So don't think your Ishmael is going to go away quickly. Guys, when you make a mistake, when you jump the gun to do something for the Lord, because remember, these are all things for the Lord. It's nothing negative or evil. It's things we do because we love Him. But we make mistakes and we make Ishmaels and we do our own thing. Let's, when we made an Ishmael, lift our heads up, stand up, deal with that Ishmael, and go back to the way what God said. There's nothing wrong with that. There's not one believer that hasn't made Ishmaels. But the problem is we're so full of pride sometimes we don't want to say, I made a mistake. Let's get back to God. We did this, we learned from this, but now let's move on. There's nothing to do with, no issue with that. You would have learned when you made that Ishmael not to make another Ishmael again. Now lift up your head and move on and grow in the Lord. Don't go sulk with this thing that you did wrong and try to make this thing, keep it alive. Alright, Ishmaels are difficult to raise. He's going to give you lots of grey, lots of problems. Don't make Ishmaels. Wait until the Lord tells you. Don't be in a hurry. We today are so pressured to do things quickly. God doesn't work like that. He will take His time and in His time release you to do something for Him. Not in your time. If you do it in your time, it might look like a blessing, but it's not God's plan. I rather want to walk in God's plan and His blessing than just walk in God's blessing. There's a difference between the two. So if you made a mistake, you might be listening to this and know you made a mistake. Don't worry. Step out of that thing that you did, correct it, admit you were wrong, bring correction, and go back and wait for the Lord to tell you what to do next. Don't try and keep that Ishmael alive. You're going to struggle with it for a long time. I hope this brings you some encouragement that if you've done something wrong, what it is, how to deal with it. And maybe get you aware that you don't make those problems again. I'm very aware of making Ishmaels. I don't want to make Ishmaels anymore because they can hurt you and they can keep you very busy. So think about stuff, what you might be doing at the moment, and if it's the Lord, or is it Isaac, or is it an Ishmael? Because Isaac was the promise. Look at what the promise was and the other thing you're doing. Don't look at the blessing because it's getting blessed. Look at the thing, is it from God or not? Thank you guys for listening, and I hope this challenges you to think a bit in what we do for the Lord, and bring correction where correction is needed. And He loves us so much, He even blesses us when we do something wrong. But rather let Him bless us when we do something right, His way and not our way. Take the me, myself and I out of it and allow Him to be the head of that thing. Thank you guys. Till the next time. Bye-bye.